shepherd of David. You promised that I'd have life, a drink from the well that you have supplied. All of my steps are ordered. You said I'd be blessed in leaving and coming. I know the truth. Ooh, yeah.
All the promises of God, yeah, amen, amen. All the promises of God,
All the promises, yeah, yeah.
I know what you promised me. That's what I shall believe.
Oh, 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 yeah. Lion of Judah, gentle Redeemer, you promised abundant life, so I give you my all, make a sacrifice. All my steps, they are ordered, yeah. You said I'd be blessed in leaving and coming. I know the truth, yeah.
All the promises of God,
All of your promises are yeah and amen. All of your promises are yeah and amen, yeah and amen.
you promised me.
I know what you promised me.
That's what I shall believe.
Oh, 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 oh. God, you promised joy for our pain, peace for our shame. Garments of filth you promised to exchange with a robe of righteousness. I want your promises, joy and peace. I want your promises. I need your promises. I want your promises, joy and peace. You said I could have it if I believe, so I believe.
I want your promises.
I want your promises, every single one.
I want your promises.
I agree with you, Jesus. You said I could have it, and I want your promises. I need your promises.
I want your promises.
Everything you said in your word, I believe I can have it, God. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I need your promises. I want your promises, and I need your promises. Every single one of your promises. Everything you said, everything you said, I believe, I believe. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I want your promises, all of your promises are yeah and amen. All of your promises are yeah and amen, yeah and amen. I know what you promised me.
That's what I shall believe.
Oh, 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 oh. God, you promised joy for our pain, peace for our shame. Garments of filth you promised to exchange with a robe of righteousness. I want your promises, joy and peace. I want your promises. I need your promises. I want your promises, joy and peace. You said I could have it if I believe, so I believe.
I want your promises.
1 Kings chapter 17. Come with me, if you would, to verses 8 through 16. 8 through 16, verse 8 through 16. And I think we can do it this way. I'll divide the reading assignment if you would allow me to read verses 8 through 12. And then if you would be so kind to read verses 13 through 16. Okay? And that's about half. And I'm reading from the King James Version of the Bible, starting at verse 8 of the 17th chapter of 1 Kings. The word of the Lord says, "And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee." So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks. And he called to her and said, "Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel, that I may drink." And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, "Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thy hand." And she said, "As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die." Verse 13.
And Elijah said unto her, "Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me thereof a little cake first, and bring it unto me, and have I make for thee and for thy son. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. And she went and did according to the saying of Elijah, and she said, and her house did eat many days. And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Elijah.
Amen. You may be seated in the presence of our Lord. Again, verse 12 says, "And she said, As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my sons, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me thereof a little cake first, and bring it to me." I want to talk for a moment from this thought: putting God first. Putting God first. My brothers and sisters, as we are preparing and leading up to our first fruit celebration at the beginning of the year, we are going over scriptures that will encourage and guide us as we get ready to do first fruits. And understand first fruits is something that, one, you've got to be prayerful for, and 2, you've got to be prepared for. And so for the last few weeks and for the rest of this month, we hope, and our prayer is that you are being prayerful, and at the same time you are preparing for first fruits. And somebody asked, well, preacher, tell me, what is first fruits? And so first fruit is the very first of your income in the new year, that we are preparing to give God everything. the entire first check. And we are sowing it as a first fruit offering. It's something that, watch this, yes, you need to be prayed up and prepared up for. Amen? And so here we are, and I want to encourage you, and I thought we should look at this text today, because this text to me just hits home, and God brought me here. And so here we are. And so one of the things that caught my eye in this text is that every time I have approached this text, I have usually approached it from the viewpoint of Elijah, because it is a text that, once you place it in context, it is a series of things or events that God is doing to Elijah, preparing Elijah for what lies ahead. In chapter 17, it is what I love to call for Elijah a learning course, and he's getting OJT, on the job training, and God is preparing him, watch this, for chapter 18. Because you'll discover in chapter 18, when you got some time, when you go home and look at it, is that 18 is the big showdown on the Mount Carmel, on Mount Carmel, between Elijah and the prophets of Baal. And so before he can get to the big showdown, God has to, watch this, take him through some training exercises to train and strengthen and raise the level of his faith. And so for long, I've always come to this text looking at Elijah. But God says you need to look again, because Elijah is not the only student in the text. That in this text, there are some other folk that God's training also. And so I thought today we would look at it from a fresh approach, as we look at it from the eyes of the widow. And so let me back up and give you some history to how we got here. At the beginning of chapter 17, there is the king by the name of Ahab. You might not know him too good. Most folk forget about Ahab. But as soon as I couple him with his wife, you'll say, okay, Ahab is married to Jezebel. There it is. He's got a wife who has a copyright on her name. She's got a patent on her name. Matter of fact, so bad is his wife that she's got a name exclusively for herself. I've never seen a mother have a child, a baby girl, and decide, I'm going to curse this girl and name her Jezebel. As a matter of fact, most folk in here know the name Jezebel, but what I've discovered, most of us really don't know what Jezebel did. As most folk think Jezebel is some kind of harlot or whore, but not necessarily. Jezebel never whored. Jezebel was just evil. And so if somebody called you Jezebel and before you jump bad and thought, don't you call me no hoe, you ought to at least know what Jezebel did. And, yeah, because that's fighting words there. When you cross the line and call me a Jezebel, you done called me out my name. And so bad is she that, watch this, she was feared not just by the women of Israel, but she was feared by the men of Israel. So bad is Jezebel that when she walked down the street, folk got out of her way. Never mind the king. Ahab, he's bad, yeah, but Ahab wasn't all that bad. But we understand who was running Ahab, because Jezebel was running him. And so she's a bad hombre. And so when chapter 17 hits, Israel has been engulfed in idolatry and they are worshiping Baal. Why? Because Jezebel has brought in Baal worship into Israel. Jezebel has gone in and set up Baal temples, and Jezebel has hired Baal priests to serve the people. Jezebel has had all, so she thinks, of the prophets of God put to death, and they are out and hiding from Jezebel. And so it's so bad now that the nation is worshiping a false god, and the nation is going to hell in a handbasket. It reaches a point to where Elijah says, I can't take it no more. And Elijah, up until this point, he was an unknown. He walks into the palace of Ahab, and in front of Ahab and his notorious wife Jezebel, he says, there will neither rain nor dew until I say so. And then he walked out and slammed the door. What makes this so interesting is that, one, he was bold enough to approach Jezebel and not worry if she was going to kill him or not. But here's the thing that makes it really work, is that God backed him up. And for 3.5 years, there was neither rain nor dew in all of Israel. Now you got to catch this, because most folk, we've understood where we've been sometimes without rain. We went through early parts of the summer without rain, and we were looking for rain because we were having a little fire problem. But we've never been without dew. And so if you ever want to know how bad it can get, it not raining, that's bad. But when the dew stops, then you're in serious trouble. And so he pronounces judgment upon Israel for their idolatry, and he leaves. Now watch this. God sends Elijah to the brook Kerith. And there at the brook, God tells Elijah, you pronounce a famine or a drought on the land. There will be no rain, but I will take care of you. Lesson number 1 is at the brook. Watch this, Elijah. I can take care of you in the midst of a recession. Now you got to catch this. Because if you're reading, you'll discover he's at the brook, and at the brook he's getting water every day, and God has assigned ravens to bring him food twice a day. Early in the morning, ravens bring him bread and meat to eat. And then in the evening, ravens bring him bread and meat to eat. Now, that might not sound like much to most of you all, but let me come and get you and help you, because you got to know what kind of bird a raven is. That of all of God's choices of birds that he could have sent to take care of Elijah, and you know, the first choice would have probably been the eagle, because he's majestic, he cares for his young. The next choice might have been a dove, because he's graceful and he's smooth and caring. But God sends the blackbird. Let me come and get you. He sends the raven, and the raven is notorious for not even taking care of his own offspring. And so what God wants to show Elijah is that I can get someone that doesn't even take care of their own offspring to come and see about you every day. I just want to pause parenthetically and tell you that God's so awesome that he can get folk who don't normally bless folk. He can get folk that are no good, low down, and make them turn out to be your blessing. That's why I discovered you don't need to curse everybody, because God knows how to use mean old nasty folk. And if you hang around long enough, God will have mean nasty folk blessing you. Why? Because God says, I want to show you that it doesn't matter who I send it by. I can send it by a donkey, or I can send it by a crazy person, just to show you that if it's my will for you to have it, I'll get it to you. And I've been around God now long enough to know that God can use my enemies for my benefit. I've been around God long enough to know that God can have a supervisor that can't stand me yet have to bless me on the report anyhow. I've been around God long enough to understand that mean, nasty folk can't stop God from doing what he wants to. Let me hasten. I'm just in my intro. And so he's chilling, y'all. I need you to catch this. He's chilling at the brook. He's got his Bahama shorts on. He's got his shades, his cool shirt on, and he's got his drink with his umbrella in it. And he's got maitre d' service by the Ravens, and they're bringing him his meals, and he's doing good. He's chilling. He's chilling, and then all of a sudden God says, okay, you've learned that lesson. Now I've got to take you to the next lesson. And watch this. God has a way of making you uncomfortable to get you moving to the next level. And so God says, let me cut off the water and get his attention. And once he cuts the brook off, then he has Elijah's attention, and now he tells Elijah, watch this, now you've got to go, catch this, to Zarephath. And when you get to Zarephath, watch this, I've set up somebody else to take care of you. There you'll find a widow woman, and she will take care of you. Now, I want to come and get you and show you some things here, because the very first thing that I see in the text is that once God cuts off the brook there, stops the stream there at Kerith, and then he tells him he's got to go. Watch this. God, the first thing I see is that his provisions were always prescribed. God's cutting this off, but he never cuts that off without knowing where he's going to give you your next. He always has another plan. And so when he cuts off here, he's already prescribed for you to continue somewhere else. I thought I'd just throw this one out for free. It's Sunday. So I don't fear layoff at my job, because it will never take God off guard. That if the job ends here, that was just an avenue for God to give me what I need. And if he closed this avenue, then I start looking with anxious anticipation for the next avenue that he has for me. Now here's where you're going to lose your mind, because watch this, when God closes off this avenue, he'll never send me somewhere worse than where I was. And so when this gets cut off, I understand it's time for promotion. Oh, somebody in here don't know you can get promoted by being fired. Because I got some business owners in here that will tell you, if I never got fired, I never would have started my own business. I never would have became my own boss. I never would have been working for me. And since the boss did me a favor by firing me, God took me to the next level. And so catch this. Verse 9 states, God says, arise. Get thee to Zarephath, for I have commanded a widow woman to sustain you. God tells Elijah, go to the widow. I've placed something in her heart, in her spirit, that will respond to your request. Go to Zarephath and go to the widow. Let me come and get you so I can fix that. Zarephath is not in Israel. Zarephath is in Gentile territory. Zarephath is in between Sidon and Phoenicia. And watch this, which makes Zarephath even worse, is that Zarephath is the hometown of Jezebel. God says, you got to catch this because this blew my mind. God says, I'm finna show you something now because I've taught you the lesson with the raven. That's good. He says, but now I'm finna take you into enemy territory where Baal is supposed to reign supreme. And not only am I taking you to Jezebel's hometown, but I'm assigning you to hook up with a widow. I know you missed that. I missed it too when I read it. Let me help you. A widow in a culture that's based on agriculture is the poorest of a poor person. Without her husband to tend the field, she is left without a source of income. And she's forced to do what we discover over in the book of Ruth. What Ruth and Naomi have to do is that she's forced now to go to other folks' fields and pick up scraps just to make ends meet. God says, I'm not sending you to a baller in Zarephath. Somebody who got it like that. But I'm sending you to the, oh, there it is, to a person you wouldn't have picked out. Here's where the lesson is. God says, I'm sending you first to the least likeliest place. And second, to the least likeliest person. So I can show you that I can still bless you with the least of everything. And God had to bring me to this text, and God had to put my eyes on it, and God had to teach me a lesson and show me something, because for a moment I was twisted. I had it confused, and I was really going after the wrong group. And there's not a pastor in the country that wouldn't testify, if they were being honest, that we would love to have a church full of millionaires who tithe. And whatever ministry we wanted to do, we could do it with no problem. And I've got colleagues who pastor, and they've got multiple pro athletes as members. And one of my colleagues said, man, you in Jacksonville, how many Jaguars you got? I said, can't quite get a Jaguar. I'm trying. Shook hands, I smiled, I made luncheons, I've given invitations, I told them I won't pester you, you can come, I won't bother you, I promise you I won't. I'm trying, and I was really focused on trying to get some upper echelon. But then that's when one of my partners told me, he said, listen, I got about 12 that go to my church, they members, and he said, now one of them give more than the fixed income folk. And he said, I've been discovered that if you want to get something done, God never uses ballers. But what he's looking for is the least and the less. And so what God wants to show you that, listen, I don't need a big person. I can get this done with a small person who looks like they don't have anything, but they do have a little something. And haven't you learned yet that in my hand, Gene, little becomes much? His provisions are prescribed, and he sends us the folk that it doesn't seem like they can bless us. And watch this, I've learned not not to judge a book by the cover anymore. It sends you to folk who look like they can't help you. But God says there's a reason I sent you there. Because watch this, I know something about them that you don't know. And so I sent you to the right person. I sent you to the one you needed. And if you aren't careful, you'll walk past the very person that God is trying to send you to. And God says don't look at folk on the outside. It's sometimes you got to know what's in their heart. So he says we're going to Zarephath. And watch this. Here's what blew my mind. Because the name Zarephath, if you look up the definition of Zarephath, the definition of Zarephath is a place of refining. It's where metal is refined. And God says, if I'm going to get you to the next level, I've got to send you to the refinery. Because there's some stuff that I've got to get out of you, and there's some stuff I'm trying to put into you, and so it's going to happen, catch this, not in Israel, but in Zarephath. And so the first thing I saw was that his provisions were prescribed. But watch this. The second thing I saw is that her plight was perilous. And you got to catch this. In verse 12, the widow says, as sure as the Lord your God lives, I don't have any bread. All I got is a handful of flour and a barrel and a corner of oil in a cruise. And I'm going to cook that up and die. All I've got is enough for a biscuit. That's why she gets 2 sticks. Ain't making no big 5. 2 will do. We're going to make this last biscuit. And me and my baby are going to eat it and die. Catch this. She says, prophet, in case you haven't caught it, we're in a recession. Where gas prices are piercing through the ceiling. Foreclosures are happening everywhere. Interest rates are going haywire right now. And in case you haven't caught it, you come at a bad time. That you've come asking of me at the worst time. I mean, when you thought it couldn't get any worse, when you thought the price wouldn't dare go up any higher, it kept going. When you thought your bills couldn't increase, they multiplied. And you are trying your best to figure out how to make ends meet, and here comes the man of God. And he says, at this worst of times, put God first. Her plight is perilous, but catch this, but not without hope. If you don't look closely, you'll miss it. She says, catch this, as sure as the Lord your God living. Oh, you got to catch that. Elijah says, give me something to drink, fix me something. And she says, as sure as the Lord, I promise you, I'm not lying. As sure as the Lord your God living, I don't have but just enough to make 1 biscuit. But watch this. She says, as the Lord your God living. She's a Gentile. She's living in Baal territory. But she knows that God's alive. Oh, I know you could run past that and you'd miss that. But watch this here. In the midst of being surrounded by folk who are serving Baal, this Gentile woman knows that the Lord is real. And what I caught from the text is that she says, I refuse to be affected by those around me. Because everybody around me has sold out to Baal. But I dare to be different. And I know that your God liveth. He's real. And when I saw that, that blew my mind, because watch this. She's in the midst of Gentiles who are Baal worshipers. And yet she holds true to the Israelites' God, that he's real. And she refuses to allow the folk who are in her space to change her faith. Oh, let me come and get you. I saw the look on your face. Watch this here. When I talk about idol gods, most folk sit back and hit the snooze button because you figure that was then, and we don't have any more idols now. So let me come and get you so I can show you where your idol is. Because in this country we are, catch this, I know we say in God we trust. We put that on our money, but we really don't mean that. No. Because what we mean is that it's in consumerism that we trust. We live in a capitalistic society. And watch this, haven't you figured it out yet? Our society will fail if folk don't shop. That's why the big concern coming into Christmas was how much would the gas prices affect retail? Because if you don't do retail, then the economy, which is built on capitalism and commercialism, will fail. Oh, let me come and get you. And so there is this God of commercialism that surrounds all of us. So how you know it surrounds you? Because I watch the news, and all of the Christmas shopping started before Thanksgiving. Now, if you want to see how committed you are to this God, look at Black Friday. What else can get you out of bed at 3 in the morning? Have you standing outside in the dark, in the cold, around folk you don't know, waiting for them to open the door so you can run in and give them your money. And some folk didn't even go to sleep. Y'all just went straight to the store at 12. And didn't mind standing. Watch this, standing. Because some of y'all wasn't going to get all the way down on that hard concrete. So you stood and would stand in the cold, in the dark, around folk you don't know. All for consumerism. But then we'll turn around and say, you too sleepy to come back to communion at 4. And so somewhere you got to ask, who do you have first? Because if I can get up for Walmart at 3 and I can't come back to communion with God at 4, then I need to be honest with myself and say that I, like the other folk, have a new God. I knew it would get tough up in here. It's gonna get real rough up in here. Just tell your neighbor, breathe in, breathe out. You ain't gonna stay on this too much longer. At least we hope not. And the irony is that you would stand to shop, and it ain't your birthday. And the very person whose birthday you ought to be celebrating The devil has twisted you enough to take your mind from the manger scene and put it at the mall, so that you think that Christmas is about toys and gifts, when it isn't about God's greatest move in humanity. I'm going to move. But what caught my attention is that in the midst of being surrounded by others who are doing the wrong thing, she held true to what she knew. Not only was her plight perilous, but thirdly, catch this, and I'm moving on, I'm going to get out your hair. His procedure for helping her was peculiar. In verse 13, Elijah tells her, catch this, first, fear not. In other words, don't let what you see cancel what you believe. All right. I know sometimes when you're doing the bills and you're doing the adding and you can't quite figure out how I'm going to get all this to jive and how I'm going to get ends to meet. And then you say, and plus now I've got to take out what I'm supposed to pay God, and that makes it look even worse. And you're looking at it, but I just came to tell you, fear not. Don't let what you see cancel what you believe. Because somewhere you got to believe in your heart that God will. And somebody say, what will he do? That's good enough. That's good enough for me. All I need to know is that he will. That leaves the door open for whatever I need. If I'm sick, God will heal me. If I'm hungry, God will feed me. All I need to know is that he will. His procedure is peculiar. Elijah says, watch this, do what you were going to do. He said, I don't want to change nothing. I don't want to change nothing. You said you on your way, fix your biscuit. You and your boy going to eat. Y'all going to die. He said, go ahead and do what you were going to do. Don't stop that. He says, but make me a biscuit first and bring it to me, and then go and do what you were already going to do. You got to catch this. You got to catch this. God's procedure seems crazy. And that's because God's procedures never make sense. God's going to always tell you something that if you try to figure it out with common sense, it ain't going to work. He's been like that. He told Ezekiel, listen here, preach to the wind. That didn't make any sense. But if the bones are going to live, you're going to have to preach to the wind. He told Naaman, the leper, he says, go jump in the Jordan. Now, that doesn't make any sense. Naaman said, I've got plenty of cleaner rivers back home. That doesn't make any sense. I ain't going to do that because it never makes any sense. But watch this. God has a way that the stuff that he tells you to do doesn't make sense on the front end. But if you have enough faith to try, whatever he told you would happen on the back end will happen. You just got to have enough faith to believe at the beginning. Let me hasten. That's why I tell folk you shouldn't occupy your time trying to convince folk of what God told you to do. Because whatever he told you to do ain't going to make sense to no one else. And you waste your time and miss your blessing trying to convince your buddy to get in on what God told you to do. Because sometimes what God told you to do will never make any sense. Watch this here. You go and tell your folk in the midst of a recession, in the midst of while things are going wrong and going haywire and everybody trying to make a dollar and hold on to a dime, that you're going to watch this, give God your first check. Now that don't make sense. Especially to somebody who don't know it. But for those who know it and know that he can do more with 25 checks than he could with 26, that he can do more with a little than he could with a lot. Did it make sense? So let me bring it to a close. Watch this here. Not only is procedure peculiar, but watch this. Her promise is priceless. In verse 14 states that the prophet told the widow that the barrel of meal shall not run out, neither will the oil fail. Watch this. He promised that if she gave God first, she would never reach her last. You missed that. Let me come and get you. He says, I understand what you're saying. You said that you're going to go cook a biscuit. That's all you got. There's enough for one biscuit. You and your son will eat it, hold each other, and die of starvation. He said, I don't want to change that. He said, check this out. Fix mine first.
Work it, Pastor.
And the promise is that the barrel will never run out. He says, fix mine first. And you'll never reach your last. Let me help you. God says, try me first. Not that once you try me, you're going to hit the lotto. Because you need to understand that the barrel never overflowed with milk. It's not she put the prophet first and then the barrel just overflowed with milk. No. She still had to look down in it. But every time she looked down in it, somebody gonna catch this in a minute. I got to get out of here. I'm out of time. He says, put me first. And when you put God first, what God does is God pushes your last away from you. And so when you put God first, you never reach your last. And even though it looks like it ought to be your last, God pushes it away from you. And so when you go back to the back, it ain't your last. It look like it's real close, but it ain't your last. And what God says is, I'll keep pushing your last away so that you never get to your last. Jesus say it this way, give us this day our daily bread. Now I ain't got enough for the week, but you took care of me today. And so when I get to my tomorrow, it ain't last, but it's good for the, yeah. And God says, I'll keep pushing your last away. And every time you get close, you'll never get there. I have you so you tell folk I'm almost broke. No, I ain't got money to run out and go buy me a Rolls Royce, but I got enough to get around. Yeah, there it is. I don't have everything I need for the whole month, but what for the day? I got everything. And the question isn't if God's going to make it to tomorrow. The question is if I'll make it to tomorrow. Because if I make it to tomorrow, then he's holding my tomorrow in his hand and I'll have enough for tomorrow. You ought to slap somebody a high five and say, I ain't close to my last. There it is. I'm near empty, but I ain't there. I'm by empty, but I ain't there. I'm close to empty, but I ain't empty. And what God promises is that every time I scoop out, he'll dump in. And so I'll never see the bottom of the barrel, but I might not ever see the barrel overflowing. But God's promised me that I'll never have to see the bottom, and that's good enough for me. That every time I go to the barrel and it looks like I'm getting my legs, God says I'm putting more. You ought to slap your neighbor a high five. Tell your neighbor, I'm going to put him first. I'm going to put him first. Because I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I'm going to put him first. I know how bad it looks. I'm going to put him first. Watch this. Sit down, sit down. I got to do this last part. And I understand I could shout you and go on out of here right now, but it wouldn't be complete unless I do this. Listen here. God shows me. God showed me. He said, here's where I want you to go, Gene. And that is that you got to see the woman's perspective, not the prophet. Because watch this. This doesn't really benefit the prophet. It's not for him, but it's for her. Let me come and get you. Before God sends Elijah, he already knows that the woman is coming up to her last. And he says, I'm sending you not for your benefit, but for her benefit. And because you get there, she'll never reach her last. She says, here's the plan. The plan is for me to fix this last biscuit and then eat it, and me and my son will die. You got to catch this. That's the timeline that her life had. And God says, I'm introducing an opportunity for you to change what you were going to do. And so she trusts God, puts him first, and she doesn't reach her last. The text says that until the drought ended, every time she went back, she had food. But catch this, but there's a hook in here. Because if you read verse 17 says that her son, not from malnutrition, but just from sickness, dies. And when I got there, it blew my mind. And I said, he can't die, not after what she did, not because she showed herself faithful. And God says, catch this, Gene. Even with her sowing her seed and giving me first, I refuse to detour death. Death had an appointment, and I let death run its course. She said, we're going to eat and die. He says, now watch this, she won't die, but I'm going to allow death to come get her baby. Because he was due to die. Whether Elijah showed up or not, he was going to die. And so death comes and takes her baby. And her cry is what my cry was. Not after I put you first. How now will you come and the worst thing still happens?
My God.
God said, now here's where you got to catch this. He says, watch this. I kept the barrel from depleting because I wanted her to have faith in me. And she did. She has faith. But her faith is only the size of a mustard seed. And that would be good enough if she lived in Israel around other Jews who were worshiping me. But because she's surrounded by Baal worshipers, she got to have faith at a greater level. And so he said, I let death keep its appointment. Because I've got to get her faith. Up to the next level. So when death comes, the boy dies. She gives the boy to Elijah. He takes the boy upstairs, and watch this, because he's in a learning process himself. Up until this point, nobody who's died has been resurrected. This is the first. You can put an asterisk in your Bible and just say number one. This is the first. So Elijah has no reference of somebody coming back from the dead. And so God tells Elijah, I'm getting you ready for Mount Carmel. And what you got to understand is that I am, there it is, the resurrection and the life. And so if you ask of me here, I'll do what you've never seen done before. And Elijah prays 3 times and stretches out on the boy. And after the 3rd prayer, God raises him up. Now here's your shout. And once Elijah comes back down, he carried the boy upstairs, but he walks with the boy downstairs. And once he hands the boy back to the mother say, I thought I knew who he was. But now I really know that he is Jehovah. He is the resurrection and the life. He is whatever you need him to be, however you need him to be. God is. So I got to go, and I'll see you at communion. But I just stopped by to tell you that sometimes God allows the worst to happen so that he can show you how good he is. You'll never know he's a healer till you get sick. You'll never know he's a way out of no way until you got no way. You'll never know that he is life and resurrection until you... I'm finished, but I close it with this. God said, it's at this time when gas is out of control. It's at this time while you're fighting to keep your house out of foreclosure. It's at this time when you're struggling to keep your marriage from falling to pieces. God says, watch this. I sent the preacher your way for the right time. And it's at this time. Now here's the catch. God says, I want you to put me first. Because you got some stuff that lies ahead of you in 08. Some of you thought 07 was rough. But God says it's some stuff in 08 that's going to make you thank him for 07. He says you got some stuff that's lying ahead of you. But I showed up in your space today to tell you, if you put me first, I am better than an insurance policy. I'm your assurance policy. And I told the group earlier that Allstate's claim of fame is that they're the good hand people. And I said, but after Katrina, I watched them drop so many folk. I say, if that's good hands, then I don't want to be in your hands. But God reminded me that there are another set of hands. And he works different than Allstate. Allstate wants to run when there's trouble. But God said, that's when I want to get close to you. When you're going through the worst of what you're going through, that's when I want to get close to you. So that you'll know I'm holding you in the midst of what you're going through. So why do we put him first? Because he knows what lies ahead. And I'd rather put it in his hands than to leave it in mine. Amen. And you say, what? Why now? And I tell you, the same reason he went to the widow and not to the baller. Because she needs him the most. And if you're at that spot where you need him the most, then he said, now is the time that you trust me. Lean not to your own understanding, but acknowledge me. God says, I need you to trust me. And so maybe you're here today and you don't know Jesus in the pardon of your sin. And you say, man, I made it 12 months. But if I'm truthful, I'm barely making it. And if truth be told, I might can't, I see you coming. I might can't make it the next 12. So I say to you, why don't you put your life in his hands? Why don't you make him first in your life? And I guarantee you, you'll never reach your last if you make him first. Turn to your neighbor, ask your neighbor, neighbor, are you saved? Do you have a church home that you're active in? I see you coming, my brother. And if they can't answer that, say, let me walk you down. Because today I dare you to put him first, to trust him, and see, won't God meet your every need. Watch this, because I wouldn't want you to think that it's just the preacher, but you got some folk by you that'll testify right now, if truth be told, that God will meet you at your every need. I ain't telling you something I heard. I'm telling you what I know. That he'll do it right in the nick of time. I see you coming. I see you coming. In the balcony. You need to try him. You need to try him. On my left, you need to try him. Are you here? Come on, come on. Ask your other neighbor, are you sure? He wants to meet you at your need.
You have been watching this special presentation from the Abyssinia Missionary Baptist Church. We pray that this message has been a blessing to you. If you're not a member and you want to give your life to Christ, email us at info@abyssinia.org or call us at 904-696-1770 or respond to our Facebook page at Abyssinia Missionary Baptist Church, Jax. If you want to make a contribution to the ministry by way of tithes and offerings, go to our website at abyssinia.org and click Online Giving. Select your type of contribution, and it'll take you to a secure page to make your transaction. If you want to send in or drop off your contribution, you can do so at 10325 Interstate Center Drive, Jacksonville, Florida 32218. You can also cash out your contribution to $the AB 101. Thank you again for watching, and God bless.